Kia ora, I'm Heidi North. Thank you Poetry Live for inviting me to be the guest speaker tonight, and thank you Jamie. Tonight, first of all, I'll be reading from my second book, which is called We Are Tiny Beneath the Light, and it came out in November last year. The first poem I'd like to read from it is called Piha Beach, 2 years on, and U2 picked it up for use in their Joshua Tree concert, so I thought it was a fitting one to start with. Piha Beach, 2 years on. Our feet punch bruises in the black sand, and I am back in the burn of childhood summers. The circle of sentinel gulls, their grey wings tipped to catch the light, warn me back. But I go down to the white foam edge. Blue bottles bloated with their pretty poison yield to the sharp edge of my stick. I go down to the place where the wind kicks holes through my heart. And there is a child down there, too close to the ribbony horizon line, holding his blue kite towards the updraft, still smiling as it lurches against the wide white blaze of sky. And I smile and I laugh, and I take my daughter's hand, and together we run with him, because how can I tell them? All the brutal things are yet to come. Now I'm going to take you back to the beginning of this book. It's a book in 3 parts, and the first part takes place in Aro Valley, and it's called Devon Street Songs in Wellington. Summer. We ignored all the signs. The crumpled house captured us, despite the 87-year-old carpet layer wheezing down the crooked steps. The landlord in purple velvet after him started stilettos, stage whispering, "I worry he might have a heart attack." A tangle of dead trees sprawl over the place a lawn could be. Not neglectful, but endearing. A wildness in the city. The fig tree balding in late summer, bottom layer green and holding on tight. Autumn. There were 3 red apples on the tree for weeks, and only today did you brave the undercurrent of weeds to find steady ground to stand on to pick them. They're soft, puckered as an old woman's mouth, but we still love each other. Cradle them, tender, unexpected treasures. Bring them inside to stew. Winter. The plum tree spikes naked against the brilliant blue. Some kind of wide-leaved, hacked-up tree trunk sends one brave, narrow shoot towards the sun. Spring. We promised each other we'd last till spring, survive the rain-soft stairs, avoid the neighbours fighting above. We clung tight in the dark, chill nights. But midwinter you put your fist through the bedroom wall and found nothing there except weeds and air. All this time nothing between us and the outside world. We never stood a chance. The second section is called Bone to Bone, and that's where I'm going to read the next poem from, which is called The Chickens. The chickens. It was never my idea to get the chickens. I almost blacked out in St. Mark's Square in Venice when the pigeons flocked low and brushed my face. You laughed and laughed, and I almost decided not to marry you then. But when you saw the fear was true, you led me off to eat squid ink pasta and drink light-filled glasses of Prosecco in that sinking city. But once your idea of chickens took hold, a good wife, I ran with it. I found a homemade hen house and arranged the trailer to carry it to our backyard. On the rescue chicken site, I was seduced by 2 scrappy, featherless birds. I drove to Bunnings and talked supplies with the nice man while the toddler busted around the store, and I hauled white chicken wire home, scattered organic chicken food, with the toddler on my hip, trying to dive into the chicken shit. Because I felt sorry for those damn birds. I endured the leaf-blowing, nosy neighbour telling me he wanted chickens as a child, but only got ducks. After their first day, I said, "You need to clip those chickens' wings." You said, "Those chickens have never seen natural light. They won't know how to fly." And when they flew out of their flimsy cage into the unfenced yard, Mr. Leafblower laughing, saying, "Don't be silly, girlie." Heart knocking, I got closer than I dared to shunt those birds back inside their pen, because the toddler was watching, and I inherited this fear from my own mother. A week after you told me you were leaving, we came home to empty space where the henhouse once sat, only the white chicken wire suspended around nothing. "Chick, chick," the toddler said. My ache of loss for the birds was a surprise. Mr. Leafblower went past. "Did you eat them?" I looked him in the eye. "Yes." "I never asked you where the chickens went." "You never said." "They culled those pigeons in St. Mark's Square. Murdered every last one." The next one I'm going to read is called Goodbye, Goodbye This Time. Goodbye, goodbye this time. In the middle of our destruction, the girl dies. The one who was, looking back these many years, quite probably the reason we ended up together at all. And an old friend writes, "I hadn't seen her in a decade, but those Wellington days were the most fun of my life." And it's true. We stand on opposite sides of my kitchen bench, for this is my house now, and I glimpse the boy I loved in you. Oh, life's so startlingly brief. It's impossible to do anything other than hold on to my own heartbreak. I open my palm. Fragile seed. Go catch the wind. And the next one is called Clara's Orchid. After she was born, the tiny shock of her whisked back into hospital only 2 weeks later. Her aunt brought us an orchid, the kind I favour, flat and open, pure white, the tiny yellow centre startled and tender. Like my love, it was a one-off blooming kind, the kind her father wouldn't buy me. But that orchid rose again, flower after flower, pushing through those grubby roots to blaze white hope at me. And when he left us 2 years later, he sold his other orchids and left that one behind. Now, on my tattered kitchen table, Clara's orchid blooms. The next bit I'm going to read to you is from the final section in my book, which is called Two Sons, which is dedicated to my daughters. This one is called How to Imagine Loss. This is what I didn't know before, that I would die if she died, that I wouldn't die if he left me. And now we're back in Piha Beach again, and this poem is called Burst. The girls burst from the car, bare feet fly, feather light over the tussock, shoes kicked off. They dive into the black sand, squealing, charging towards Lion Rock, Clara determined to climb it, Indy behind her. Wind whisking my protests of danger away, no rails, jagged rocks. So I follow, running now, behind them up the crumbly path. Finally hearing me, they turn, a whipped tangle of hair, their unruined faces caught with light, and I can't help but love them. My brave, fierce daughter and fearless stepdaughter, a child once afraid of the wind. I want to yell, "Come back, turn around!" But they're looking at me like they still believe in my bravery. "Wait for me," I say instead, "wait for me." And they will, this time. From the top we survey our domain, the sand, the sea, those hills. For an instant each soft blade of tussock is picked out in brilliant sunshine, the world sharpened by tiny shadows. This is the last poem in my book. It took me a while to finish this book, to know what the final poem would be, and something I didn't mention before is that Clara and Indy both did little illustrations in this book, so there's little illustrations like this throughout it that they did for me. And I asked this poem, they're gorgeous, this last poem, I got the ending from the book from them really, so it was a wonderful idea of my publisher from the Makaro Press to help me with this. 2 sons. Will you draw some pictures from my book? What's it about? Clara asks. Read it to us and we can draw it, says Indy. How can I tell them? It's about a girl. 2 girls? Called Clara and Indy, says Clara. Maybe next time. This one is about a girl with lots of feelings. Can you draw small, strange things? Black and white? Indy sits down to draw. Tufts of monsters and tiny worlds appear. Can you draw a boy with a kite? I ask them. Indy picks up a fresh page. Clara is intent on something. She keeps her arm over it till it's done. It's a woman with a wild dress, a full-page smash of colour. It's a queen, says Clara. She's flying 2 sons. Mum, she says, it's you. And we were lucky enough to be able to include it in the book. And when Clara saw it in there, she said, oh, is that allowed to be in there? I thought they were only allowed to be black and white. But she was absolutely thrilled. So I thought for the next bit, I would read a little bit from my first book, which is called Possibility of Flight. And it's sort of set in Wellington and London and sort of roams around whangaro heads, roams around childhood and OEs and all the rest of it. And the first poem I thought I would read from it is called The Women. The Women. At 25, my grandmother wore her hair as memory. Rosary braids sliced her back. Tendrils strayed and burned her eyes. She dreamed of princes, but got her sister's children. Gawky, squawky babies desperate for their mother, who was lost, for her own safety, behind quietly medicated walls. My other grandmother, her beauty strung like a broken guitar, tended 2 children 10 months apart. Her despair cut shapes in the darkness. At 25, my mother was married to the wind, her dress billowing out at her calves. Tiny roses struggled over the brown fabric. I was behind her smile, dark and budding, quiet and slippery as the ring on her finger. As I said, this book partly takes place in Wellington, and this is called Too Long in Wellington. After a while, I want to be able to walk into a stranger's house and not see my ex-boyfriend's couch and him lying on it all la-di-da and, oh, didn't I tell you about Emma? Cuba Street cafes wrap their cluttered arms around my thrashing smile. I hide in dark places, but people are always throwing themselves at me, leaping in my way at corner tables, forcing me to smile through their gritty packets of cigarettes. No, I gave that up years ago, holding their faces up to the airbrushed kissy-kissy of cheeks. And we wind up having coffee at midnight espresso, trembling over vegan chocolate cake, where, of course, he works after hours, just so I can bump into my shame again and again. The next one I want to read from here is called London to Oriental Bay. From this distance I call for salt sting, hunger for the wind, a sky whipped grey under the shadow of the Virgin on the hill. I can still taste your coffee on my lips in the cafe with the red chairs, superheroes flying backwards over them. I close my eyes to darkness, turn to you drinking sunlight. We make silhouettes driving round the bays, holding hands, all the windows down, listening to voices that sound like us on the radio. Returning. Bitter and dark, like my heart, this coffee is splintering inside me. Stuck in the silence of prissy-eyed stars, I miss the rumble of tin cans and the neighbours' nightly brawl, kids and the street lamp kicking through cheap curtains, the housing block party, monotone wail for Jesus ripped out at midnight, the community centre magically sucking African women into the light. My rage is the kind that can't find traction here. It burns under the compassion of home, the drapery of sick oranged velvet, charcoal soft skies lapped through with stars. I will sleep like a log, like a child, and regret it. And then this one. That girl. She rides side saddle into her own cliche. Her heart is pumping smoke, boots heavy with things unsaid, sunset flecked with mud. She's breathing fire. Flames curl from her lips. Slow dancing lovers with cigarette smiles slink and hips turn on the clock. And still, after all this time, after so many battered leather jackets, crumpled sleeps on strangers' couches, cups of tea from chipped mugs, frosty morning mouths, exits in the blue-grey dawn, thumb out, a hook to hang that burnt ribbon of highway. She knows, she knows, she knows. She will never be that girl who knows the names of roses. And this is the last poem I would like to leave you with, which is called Baby. Baby, when I nestle you, body close to body, your small heart beats a small song, the sound of tiny firecrackers exploding. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. I hope you enjoyed my poetry. Both of those books are available from bookshops or online. Thank you so much. I hope to see you again in person soon.